Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Sports Speak. Hope you're doing well. It's episode 83 in the midst of the NFL playoffs. Maddie Kalegi, joined today by Zoe Alter. And of course, there's a lot to get into. NFL Super Wildcard Weekend is in the books. Wasn't very super, to be honest. There was a lot of blowouts and then a lot of drama and controversy in the only two close games, Bengals, Raiders, Cowboys, Niners, potentially decided based on officiating related situations in those games. But a lot to look forward to coming up this weekend. Four really good matchups on the NFL playoff scene. But we've got to start where everywhere started this week with the Cowboys and the Niners. And just a crazy game. Shouldn't have even come to the situation with the Cowboys actually having a chance to potentially win the game because the Niners were up 16 after three quarters and looked to be in the driver's seat. Then Jimmy Garoppolo threw an interception and the Cowboys sort of came back. We've seen this before where Dallas's offense has been completely flat in the first three quarters of a game. And then they come back strong in the fourth quarter and mount a resurgence, but it's typically not enough. And we don't really know if it would have been enough or not, but I know some people are saying they like the call, but I still don't understand why you'd run a quarterback draw with 14 seconds left in the game and how you expected to be able to snap it. And I know the ref was a little slow getting to the ball, but is it really worth taking that risk instead of throwing something to the sidelines potentially? I know the Niners had changed their defense up a little bit from the previous few plays, but I just think it was a terrible decision. And as an Eagles fan, I can happily say that the Eagles made it just as far as the Dallas Cowboys this season, despite what the records show. So, Zoe, what do you make of that finish and how the Cowboys fans are feeling and dealing with this, and about the 49ers getting this win and getting to move on to face off with Green Bay?
I think if you look at it from the way the game ended, it's upsetting. I mean, in a way, I understand why they were like, okay, QB sneak, just because no one else seemed to be doing anything. But also in the first three quarters, Dak's that kind of player where he's either going to have the best game of his life or he's going to have the worst game of his life. Like, that's just the way he plays. I had him in fantasy this year, and I could always tell by the first quarter how he was going to do. If he either had negative points or he had 14 already. Like, that was just the way it went. And this game was one of the games where he had negative already. Like, he wasn't going to get anywhere. So I think starting off there, that was concerning for the Cowboys because you can't have a Super Bowl team where your quarterback can have a game that bad all the time. And it wasn't like his game was that bad, but it was just he didn't create anything. So at the end, I guess I understand why they gave it to him because he wasn't passing the ball well. So that was their only option. But I didn't agree with that call. But if you go to the 49ers side of it, Jimmy G is so bad. Like, can we just discuss for a minute how bad he is? There were so many times during the game where he threw a ball that he should not have thrown, or he threw a ball to a receiver that should have caught it, but he just threw it like way over their head or just completely missed them. It was horrifying watching. Like, how is he moving on to the second round of the playoffs when he literally can't hit a receiver?
Okay, that's true, but look at the rest of the NFC. Looking at the rest of the NFC picture, and the Niners snuck in the last game of the season. Aside from maybe Kirk Cousins, I don't think you can give me another quarterback who was fully healthy in the NFC that is better than Jimmy Garoppolo that missed the playoffs, because Russell Wilson was still dealing with an injury. Kirk Cousins was on a poorly led team, and the rest of the teams have bad quarterbacks. So, I mean, that's what happens also. And I know we'll get into this, and we were just talking about it before we started. There were teams that made the playoffs that probably didn't deserve to make the playoffs. And I know the NFL wanted to expand to 7 teams making the postseason from each conference. And I'm an Eagles fan, and I was ecstatic to see the Eagles in the playoffs. And they didn't do all that bad against Tampa Bay. That being said, they didn't belong. Neither did Pittsburgh. And I mean, the 49ers did get the 6th seed, but it's a lot of people thought they didn't necessarily belong either. But I still think they're a pretty good team. And I know you have your doubts with Jimmy Garoppolo, but he still got them to the postseason, and he's also dealt with his own fair share of injuries this year with a thumb problem, and that's really plagued him throughout his career.
But also, that whole team, right, during this one game had so many injuries. Like, how are they even expected? Like, we just saw person go down after person. Like, that was why the Cowboys in the fourth quarter, I think personally, were able to start gaining a little momentum because the 49ers starters just kept getting plucked out of the game because it was one after the other. It was TV time after TV time out because for injuries. So how are they supposed to even compete in the next round of the playoffs when they came in as a 6th seed, almost lost their lead to the Cowboys, and now have like half of their starting roster?
Well, I think losing Bosa is a big hit. And if he's not cleared from concussion protocols, that's going to be tough because then they can't really mount a pass rush against Aaron Rodgers. But it's important that they have a healthy secondary. And then the offense, I mean, they've been able to roll it through Deebo Samuel a lot. Deebo Samuel was strictly a receiver going into this year. But then when they had injuries to the backs, he's kind of become like Cordero Patterson, where he's just a complete flex option. They're using him as a runner. They're using him as a receiver. And the Packers are going to have to try to crack down on that. But let's not forget, too, yeah, the Packers won when these teams faced off at the beginning of the year, but they needed a heroic Aaron Rodgers drive with 33 seconds left in that game to win by just 2 points against San Francisco. So I don't know. I had my doubts about the Niners. I predicted the Cowboys were going to win this game. By the way, my picks just completely fell apart because I predicted chaos. I thought that we'd see some upsets, and that didn't happen. And of course, Tim got all 6 of his games right. So just as I came back in the last few weeks of the year, now I'm suddenly behind again. But let's forget about that for a moment. I just want to think about now with the Cowboys moving forwards, because there's some people who are saying fire Mike McCarthy, and yeah, that might fix some things, but I still think there's more that needs to be shown with this team. I don't really think Kellen Moore is that great of an offensive coordinator. And I think it is insane that he's, being considered for some head coaching positions, because there are more than enough coordinators out there. Plus you have Brian Flores on the market. Plus Doug Peterson. I know he had his antics in the last game of his Eagles tenure. He won a Super Bowl with a backup quarterback. He's looking for another job. There are so many candidates, even on the Cowboys staff. You have Dan Quinn, who coached in a Super Bowl. I know he choked the game with the Falcons, but he's a better, I think he's more well fit to coach an NFL team than Kellen Moore. So I think that's one of the problems. And I really wonder, and I want to get your opinion on this, Dak Prescott going forwards, because this year we saw him be very streaky. Yeah, he'll have a game where he'll throw for 400 yards, but then he'll have these silent halves against mediocre teams. And we saw the Cowboys dominate the NFC East, but they couldn't do anything against other teams. They dropped 3 of their 4 games outside the conference. They lost to Denver. They lost to Tampa, which wasn't a huge surprise, but they lost to the Raiders on Thanksgiving. They barely beat the Chargers. I mean, they really struggled against good teams from other conferences, which really makes you wonder, yeah, they had a decent record. They won 12 games this season, but is it no different from any other year where the NFC East would go 8-8 and the division winner just gets dominated in the first round of the playoffs?
I think there were some games where the Cowboys had, I think you give them some credit because obviously the East is so easy, right? But you have to give them some credit because Dak did have games where he played amazing, right? But I think the question moving forward is, I don't think you look for another QB right now because Dak's still young. They just signed him to another huge deal. He has years left. They have to pay him a lot of money. I don't think you can get rid of him as your franchise QB just because you've built everything around him. But I do think you have to do something about his streakiness, either whether that's bring in a backup that maybe they actually sort of believe in to play under Dak. And then it's okay, here's motivation because if you don't bust your butt, we're going to throw someone else in. I think maybe, I don't know the exact answer, but I think they keep Dak as their starter. I don't think they bring in, I don't think they try to trade. I don't think they do anything with that. But as for head coaches, first of all, you talked about Kellen Moore. He used to work in the Lions organization, right? And he sucked so bad. And even when I saw that he was the offensive coordinator for the Cowboys, I was shocked because I was he got a job? I was what happened? So absolutely agree with you in the fact that he shouldn't be considered for a head coaching position anywhere. I was surprised he's even still the OC of the Cowboys. And I think if they keep Mike McCarthy, they have to get rid of Kellen Moore. I don't think you keep Kellen Moore unless you're doing a whole 3 thing. I think that was one of the issues with the offense is that the Cowboys offense could be so strong at times, but how do you even the thing with an offensive coordinator, right? It's when your offense is strong, your offense is strong. So they're doing the job. But when they're not strong, it's the offensive coordinator's job to draw up some play that will get them out of that funk. And you can't leave that all on Dak. You can't leave that all on the team, no matter if he's playing sucky, because you have to put him in situations where he has the opportunity to play well and he's not just stuck in this position. And I'm not saying Dak's not bad at times because he sucks at times. Don't get me wrong. But I think you need an offensive coordinator who's willing to take more shots or, come up with things that are more abstract. I think everything we saw from the Cowboys this year was very standard. And the fun plays that we saw were long throws down the field and they would just have quick moving offense. But I wanted to see more from them. So I would say keep Mike McCarthy, but switch your offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I have a couple opinions here. First of all, the big problem with the Cowboys last year was their defense, and they fixed a lot of those problems.
Yeah.
Say what you want, but Diggs did have a ton of picks. I know he had trouble in coverage. Micah Parsons, as a rookie, became a standout linebacker and is now one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. So they made those improvements. The offense was supposed to be what was stable, and the defense did not do a terrible job. They held San Francisco to 23 points. With the offense and with the quote-unquote star power that the Dallas Cowboys allegedly have in their offense, you should be expected to score more than 23 points in a home game against a banged up 49ers defense.
Yep.
And this is what we've seen the Cowboys offense go silent and go completely dark at times this season with Dak Prescott healthy. And I know they lost Gallup, but you still have Amari Cooper, you have CeeDee Lamb, you have Zeke, you have Tony Pollard, you have all these weapons, and they just don't know how to utilize them. And my second point is this: Mike McCarthy, I don't think is a great coach. I've never really thought it. I think he could have done, I think Aaron Rodgers would have a much better resume if Mike McCarthy was not the coach for 3/4 of his career. I think he sort of held Aaron back because we've seen what Aaron Rodgers has been able to do now since he's turned age 35 over these last 3 years, since Matt LaFleur became the coach of the Green Bay Packers. And I know I've had criticisms of McCarthy on this show before because of how he's called timeouts and just overall game management and clock management. He's not at fault here that much at all for what happened at the end of that game. He used his timeouts properly. He threw the challenge flag appropriately in the second half. Kellen Moore is the one who ran the play, and Dak Prescott is the one who didn't know the rule that you have to have an official touch the ball before you just give it to your center arbitrarily. So I know Mike McCarthy is getting a lot of the blame deflected directly at him because he is the head coach. But guess what? The players have to play. The players have to know the rules. And Kellen Moore has to know that you don't call a quarterback run with 14 seconds left up the middle when your previous 4 plays had all been completed passes down the sidelines that had gotten you more than halfway down the field. So,
yeah, and he didn't do anything like all year. Kellen Moore's offense was boring. Like they would have times when they were great, but you didn't see like the Philly special out of them. You didn't see some of these crazy plays out of them. And then the one time he decides to do something crazy is with 14 seconds left with the QB sneak. Like it was just wrong timing.
yeah, that's true. So, but the one good thing for the Cowboys is that Dak Prescott can celebrate winning Nickelodeon MVP. So,
Oh yeah. That's like the biggest honor. Honestly, who needs the Super Bowl ring?
I know 2 years and it's been the losing quarterback in the playoff game that's won the award in like overwhelming fashion because it was Mitch Trubisky last year and now it's Dak. But let's move on from the Cowboys because I made a very poor prediction on this show. I think it was the last time Zoe was on because the Patriots had just beaten the Bills.
Oh my
in the game
God,
when
you and Mac
only threw the ball
Jones.
3 times, and they were 9-4 at that point. And I thought the Patriots at that point were the favorites to win the AFC. Now let's also remember that at the very beginning of the season, I picked the Cleveland Browns to win the Super Bowl, and they didn't even make the playoffs. So
Yeah, how's that going?
now I've failed completely twice now in the AFC. So I'm in disarray at this point. But I guess I was a little wrong on Mac Jones. I don't want to be too hard on him still because he is a rookie quarterback, but I think maybe I was comparing him a little too much to Tom Brady. So I'll admit that. But the Bills looked really good, and they had honestly a perfect game offensively. 47 points. They scored touchdowns on all 7 of their drives. So Buffalo's offense was rolling. Kansas City, same way. I don't think it's that much of a surprise, though I did also predict an upset. I thought Big Ben would have one more special moment.
Over the Chiefs?
We've seen how bad Patrick Mahomes has been this season. I don't know. I had a weird feeling. I thought with Mike
A weird
Tomlin,
feeling that didn't work out.
Okay, yeah, it did not work out.
Yeah.
That's so the Chiefs and Bills are both moving on. I did terrible with my predictions. So all of that said, it's the Chiefs and the Bills now coming up in a rematch. Both of these teams were insanely on fire offensively in the wild card round. Last season, the Chiefs took care of business against Buffalo and moved on to the Super Bowl. What do you think, Zoe's going to happen this time when they meet up this weekend?
I'm literally so excited for this game. Like I can't even express how excited I am to watch this game because just the offensive power of both of these teams, right? And I agree with you. The Chiefs they've had times season where they weren't that good. And Patrick Mahomes, even at times during that Steelers game, he would make throws that almost looked out of desperation, right? He made throws he shouldn't have made. He always makes throws like that. Josh Allen looked a lot more grounded during his game. I think he looked more comfortable. The Bills were playing in freezing weather, and I think there was something about that I think that helped because the Patriots were less used to that, where the Bills are used to that. But they looked so composed, and that was something that the Bills are so scary in the playoffs because you even saw last year. Any year they get in, they can make a huge run, and they're like people don't see them as that, and I think they're still a little bit of a dark horse, even though people know they're good, but they always are a dark horse candidate. So for the Bills, I think if they stay grounded and work through Josh Allen, and if their defense can come alive a little bit, I think they definitely have a chance. Like, I would pick them to beat the Chiefs, I think. Like, the Chiefs, they're like, this is how it's going to go. If the Chiefs win this game, they'll go to the Super Bowl. If they don't win this game, they're not going to go to the Super Bowl. Like, that's just the way it's going to work out. Like, they'll win the Super Bowl. If they don't
win this game, they're going to be eliminated.
No, I know, but like, I'm saying, like, if they win this game, like, they're going to win the Super Bowl. But if they don't win this game, obviously they're, yeah, you know what I'm saying. I realize now. I was like, wait, what? But it took me a second. But I think this is like a make or break game. However, I go with the Bills here because I want to see Josh Allen play. I want to see them shut Patrick Mahomes down. And I want to see the Bills capitalize on his mistakes because he's made a lot this year.
Yeah, I think Buffalo kind of has, I know they're on the road and Arrowhead Stadium is a tough environment to go into, but I think Buffalo may have the upper hand here. I think they're a better overall team. I have my doubts about Patrick Mahomes. I was always a Mahomes fan until I decided to draft him in some of the first couple rounds in 3 of the 4 fantasy leagues that I was in this year. And then I saw him play terribly for the
now you're a hater.
Weeks of the year. Then all of a sudden, once I was eliminated from the fantasy playoffs, all of a sudden Patrick Mahomes starts playing really well against the Chargers and Denver to finish out the season. But anyway, focusing on the game itself, I think the Bills, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, they were all very motivated from what happened last season. They honestly got embarrassed in that playoff game, but now they're re-strengthened. The Chiefs do not have the same defense or O-line that they had last season when those teams met up. So for those reasons, I think that the Bills are going to be able to get it done. But I want to shift to the NFC because, I mean, we do have the token Detroit Lions fan here, and Matthew Stafford has finally won a playoff game with the Rams as they took care of business against the Cardinals, and Kyler Murray just looked terrible in that game. But the Rams are moving on. Sean McVay on another playoff run. Of course, he's already coached in a Super Bowl before, and the Rams get ready to face up with the Buccaneers. Now, Tampa did beat the Eagles. I'm an Eagles fan. I will say that they did score 15 points. It wasn't the end of the world. It wasn't too terrible. But, I mean, I was an honest Eagles fan. I was not expecting anything more, and I can still celebrate the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles, with a backup quarterback, beat Tom Brady in a Super Bowl game before, with our backup quarterback making receiving touchdown in the second quarter. So, I don't really care what happened this time around. But now what we do have to focus on is the Buccaneers and the Rams, a rematch. The Rams handed Tampa their first loss of the year earlier this season and seemed to be able to hold Tom Brady largely in check, which is something that really only the New Orleans Saints have been able to do over the last 2 years since Brady joined the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So looking into this game, Matt Stafford, Tom Brady facing off with a spot in the NFC Championship on the line. How do you see this one handling and going out?
Before I talk about this game, can I just say the one play where Kyler was falling over in the end zone and he threw the ball right into the hands of one of the Rams players. I forget who it was, but then the Rams player ran right into the end zone for the pick six. I don't think you understand. Like, I've been laughing over that video for a week straight. Like this week, whenever I was sad, I just played the clip like on repeat and it made me laugh so hard. Like it was so funny. Anyway, moving on to this game. I've been conflicted all season about the Rams, right? Because part of me, like, I have Matt Stafford's jersey literally on my wall here. Like I love Matt Stafford. He's literally one of my favorite players ever. He will always be, no matter what team he's on. But if the Rams suck this year, the Lions get their pick, right? So I was eating me all year. But because they're already in the playoffs and they're already going to be having a pick in the high 20s, low 30s anyway, I was like, fine, I'm just going to root for them through. So for me, I'm all in on the Rams. Like, absolutely. Their defense is terrifying. Anyone who has to go up against their defense, so scary. The Cooper Kupp, I mean, he's so hard to defend. He's just everywhere. He gets so many targets. The key for the Rams is, the key for the Buccaneers is you have to shut down Cooper Kupp. You can't let Cooper Kupp get near the ball at all, which is so hard because he's this target hog for the team. The one thing that really scares me for the Rams is Odell. And I've never liked Odell. I think his personality is like an Antonio Brown. I think he sucks. I think he just drags the whole team down. Honestly, I think it comes down to a lot of him because he had plays where he just dropped the ball full out, or he just like couldn't play last week. He had plays where he was awful. And I think you have to be able to trust your receivers, right? You're going to be in situations where these games are going to come down to one or two plays just because the teams are so good. And especially against Tom Brady, a team that has Tom Brady on, you can't afford to make mistakes. Matt Stafford's going to have another great game. He's going to have one of his better games. He's going to have to hope that Aaron Donald scares the crap out of Tom Brady and Tom Brady can't throw. And he's got to hope that Odell Beckham Jr. can catch the ball. So for me, I'm picking the Rams because I want to see them win. Like, absolutely, absolutely. I want to see them go to the Super Bowl. But I have concerns about their receiving core.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And the Buccaneers have a really solid secondary too. And they might be able to shut down Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham Jr. And beyond that, Matthew Stafford doesn't have many options when it comes to throwing the ball. They do have Cam Akers back from his torn Achilles miraculously, and he's been an impact player ever since he came back on the field for the Rams in Week 17. And they've got a solid backfield overall with Henderson and Sony Michel, plus you've got Akers. So it's a nice mix that Matthew Stafford has to work with. For the Bucs, it's going to be the same question that has plagued them ever since Antonio Brown made his big show and walked off the field. Who is Tom Brady throwing the ball to?
Yeah.
Because Mike Evans, Jalen Ramsey is going to be all over him during this game. So Mike Evans is probably going to be largely neutralized. He can only go to Rob Gronkowski so much. I know he's probably going to be effective with Gronkowski at points, but once Evans is covered and he's gone to Gronk as much as he can, where else does he go? Now, if Leonard Fournette is activated, that's a nice addition to this offense. But even this running core, I mean, you don't have Ronald Jones healthy right now and no Chris Godwin. Antonio Brown is probably off in a Nets game or something right now.
And the Rams defense has been really, really good against the run. Like, that's one of these, just because they have that really strong front line. So if they do manage to neutralize the Buccaneers wide receivers, which I don't think would be that hard, I think they pretty much have them down with the runs anyway.
Yeah. Now, the one question with that is going to come down to the Buccaneers offensive line, which has been one of the best in the NFL this year, because you're going to have Aaron Donald and Floyd and Von Miller all charging at Tom Brady. But Tom Brady, of course, is the greatest check down thrower in the history of the NFL, and he's been doing it for 2 decades. And he has some versatile backs and some slot receivers. He can go to Scotty Miller, he can go to Tyler Johnson. He can throw those slow dump offs. So the big question to me is going to be, can the Buccaneers offensive line hold back Aaron Donald and Von Miller enough to give Tom Brady the time to get off those check down throws? Because once they get into that second level, that's where things can become vulnerable with that Rams defense. Because aside from Jalen Ramsey, the Rams do not have a great secondary, and they don't have an extremely good linebacking core either. Aside from Von Miller, it's really just that front four on the line with Aaron Donald and Floyd and Von Miller. So I think that's going to be interesting. And on the other side of the ball, like you said, it's going to be all about how can Matthew Stafford limit the mistakes. We've seen him have some turnovers, especially in the first half, in some very important games this season. And we saw him struggle against San Francisco and Baltimore recently. He did a good job snapping out of the slump in the first half against the Cardinals, but we also know the Cardinals were very dysfunctional, and their coach, Cliff Kingsbury, I don't really think is very equipped, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the Rams and Bucs match up. Personally, I don't think you can bet against Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but I do think it's going to be a close game. I think the Rams are going to put up a nice fight, and I think it's going to be close. Maybe the Rams even carry a lead into halftime, but I mean, Tom Brady always finds a receiver. Even when everything happened, he found some guy named Cyril Grayson Jr., who didn't even play football in college, to lead him on a 93-yard drive in the final minute to beat the Jets. So you never know with Tom. But I want to talk about Cliff Kingsbury, because I was on my radio show a couple days ago, and I got very passionate about Cliff.
Oh my God.
I do not think this man is really equipped to be coaching in the NFL at this point as a head coach. Now, I was baffled how he even got a head coaching opportunity over some of these other college guys. And first of all, we already know that most of the time, coaches that go from a college head coaching job directly to the NFL as a head coach usually doesn't work. Aside from Pete Carroll, you can't really think of many other examples where it's gone well. Urban Meyer, Nick Saban, Steve Spurrier, all of these have been major failures. Cliff Kingsbury, and this is a trend, by the way, when he coached at Texas Tech, it's not like this team was top 10 in the country. They were winning 7 games a year and going to some random bowl game in Texas every year. So and what would usually happen is that they'd start 4-1, 5-1, but once they started playing the tough games in Big 12 play, they'd fold and they'd fall apart. What has the Cardinals done every single year he's been the coach? Start off decent or really well and then fall apart. Ever since AJ Green had that moment in the end zone against Green Bay where it seemed like he forgot he was playing football and an interception happened and the Packers got the win when Aaron Rodgers had his entire receiving core on the COVID list, the Cardinals have been in free fall. And some of that you can attribute to Kyler Murray, but Murray's still played pretty well. And even when Murray was hurt, Colt McCoy didn't do that bad. Cliff Kingsbury just isn't able to hold a team together for a full duration. So looking at the Cardinals in the future, there's talent on the roster. I know they had some injuries this year, but their offense and defense has some veteran leadership and they should be contenders again. Do you think Cliff Kingsbury really has a future where he can be successful as a coach in Arizona?
I think he does. And not because he's so qualified or not because he's even obviously they've had issues against those bigger teams, as you said, but I think it comes down to he knows this team really well. And he mostly assembled this team. He's worked with Kyler all the way up. And I think if anyone's going to coach the Cardinals to anything, I think it will be Cliff Kingsbury, just because I can't see anyone else doing it. And that's just the way the Cardinals run, the way Kyler plays. I think they have a very Cardinals style of play, the way he utilized James Conner this whole year, especially when injuries happen. I think that's a very Cliff Kingsbury thing to do. And that's how we've seen the Cardinals have success, has been under him with their offense. I think he stays just because I don't see another person who could coach the Cardinals in the same way.
So let's talk about the last matchup, the Bengals and the Titans. Now, Tennessee somehow survived to get the number 1 seed in what was a really ugly year in the AFC because everybody just kept dropping winnable games. But the Titans dropped the least, and they ended up getting the number 1 seed. So the AFC playoffs run through Nashville, and Derrick Henry should be back. So that's going to be a huge addition to see how that Bengals D-line, which has some injuries that they suffered last weekend, how they can handle Derrick Henry, and of course Ryan Tannehill, who has been a pretty solid performer in the postseason in the past couple of years with the Titans. Now the Bengals, of course, have the Joe Burrow-Jamar Chase connection, and that has been simply unstoppable over these last few weeks. And the Bengals got the job done against the Raiders, even if one of those touchdowns came after a whistle was blown. But let's not talk about that. That officiating crew, by the way, is not even allowed to officiate another game again this postseason. So the NFL cannot they can't get away from themselves. And every year, It seems like there is major controversy with an officiating decision in the playoffs.
It wouldn't be the NFL if there wasn't. It wouldn't be. There wouldn't be.
Yeah, every year. Ever since the Des Bryant game against Green Bay. I mean, it's just a trend. But I think it's going to be a really fun matchup because Joe Burrow has been, I'd argue, the best quarterback in the NFL over the last 5 weeks. Ever since that game where he threw for 525 against Baltimore, I think that was week 15 or 16. He beat the Chiefs. He got the Bengals to a solid seeding. He sat out the last week of the season, then came back and was throwing strikes against a Raiders team that had all the momentum on their side after winning 3 straight games with game-winning field goals as time expired. So that was a huge win for the Bengals. I know the Raiders were mangled and had all their own problems from the season, but they were still going to be a tough defeat. And the Bengals, while it was a close game, ended up securing the victory. Now, I wonder how their defense is going to hold back Derrick Henry. I think it's going to be a tough game. It's hard to pick against Tennessee, but you never know with Joe Burrow. So what are you feeling now that the Bengals finally, by the way, got that hump off their back? They finally won a playoff game for the first time in 30 years. Do you think they can win another one this weekend?
The Lions are now the only team who haven't in the last 30 years. Just
0-0-0 winning.
New record. But as for the Bengals, I mean, Joe Burrow has been great, as you said, and he's been really consistent. I think that's one of the main things is that he hasn't fluctuated as much. His rookie season, obviously, before he got hurt, we saw a little bit of fluctuation. He was good, but there were some games when he looked like a rookie. And this year, he doesn't look anything like that. He looks like a new QB. He's coming out, especially in these last couple of weeks. I have personally always had my doubts about Ryan Tannehill. I don't think he's that strong a QB. I think the Titans bringing him there. I was surprised when the Titans have done what they've done in the past year, even just making it to the playoffs and having success with Ryan Tannehill, because I've never believed in him or his arm, but he's gotten it done. I think mostly due to the targets they had. But the Titans offense itself is really scary, other than Ryan Tannehill. Put him on a little side there. But like other than Ryan Tannehill, I think their offense is really scary. But Derrick Henry back from injury, I don't know if he's obviously still going to be Derrick Henry, but how good do you think he's going to be great the second he gets back?
I don't know if he's going to be great, but they also have the Derrick Henry lookalike, Leandre Foreman, who over these past few weeks has been tearing it up and literally looks like Derrick Henry running down the field. So, I mean, they have a nice balance, and Henry's not going to get tons and tons of snaps because the original indication was that he was going to miss the remainder of the season. But I think they're going to still be able to use Henry in ways that he can be beneficial to the team in this game.
This is such a hard pick. Like, I'm trying to decide who I would pick, and I don't know. I think it's going to be a toss-up. I think it's going to come down to the defense, because both offenses are totally capable. So it's going to come down to which defense can stop the other defense. I love Jamar Chase and I love Joe Burrow, but I think the Titans at home are going to get the job done.
Well, it should be fun to see. So 4 big wild card games coming up this weekend. Of course, me and Tim will have our pick 'em. Hopefully I can actually do well this time and not go crazy. Now I know to not pick for chaos. And no. Tim, of course, had a perfect 6-0 because he's Tim Moore. But you can follow along on our Twitter at SportsSpeak Live. I want to just touch on baseball quickly because, first of all, I can't get past the fact that me and Zoe have literally the exact same.
We're literally twinning.
I know. This is like crazy.
This is fantastic.
I know. So let's talk about baseball because it's been about 2 months now since the lockout came. There has been one meeting between the players and ownership, and it did not go well. Supposedly there's a second one coming on Monday. But I mean, February is a week and a half away, and I think we know spring training is not starting on time. Now, the question is, how long is this going to go on? Because supposedly it was a very quick meeting. The ownership, Major League Baseball ownership, stated what they wanted, and the players pretty much denied almost everything they said. So clearly, there has not been they haven't gotten any closer over the holidays to any sort of a deal. So, and like I said when this first started, let's not forget about how 2 years ago, Major League Baseball, after the COVID stoppage, could have started probably about 2 months before they actually did. All the other outdoor sports, golf, tennis, NASCAR, horse racing, everything else that was happening outside came back Memorial Day. MLB ended up coming back right around when the NBA and the NHL did. And of course, basketball and hockey had many more things to consider because they were indoors. Baseball was an outdoor sport, and baseball was ready to return on June 1st, but they couldn't agree on a schedule with the players, and the players and owners were clashing about that and the rules to use for the season, and it got dragged out for another 7 weeks. And that was just in 2020. Now you're dealing with, and that was just for one season too. Now you're dealing with a labor agreement that will go long term for the next 10 years for pretty much for most of these players, the duration of the rest of their baseball career. So of course they're going to be passionate about the things they want to see changed while they are still playing on the field. So at this point right now, we don't know much about what's going on, but Zoe, from the indications that we've seen, do you think the season's going to be starting on time? Or if not, what do you think the approximation is of how much of a season we actually get this year?
I'm not sure if the season will start on time. I mean, we saw the MLB pull off a 60-game season, right? And I'm not saying it's going to be that short, but they know they can get away with the short season, and they know they've done it before. And more than any other league, they've been successful in doing that. But can they do it for purposes that aren't COVID related? I think the fans would get angry. And I think that's a big part of it, is that baseball's had issues over the past however years, because it's always been, it's America's sport, it's America's pastime. But people don't care about that much. They don't care as much about baseball as they used to, right? Baseball has been sinking in ratings. Less people watch it. And I love baseball. I will always watch baseball. But the MLB still needs that money. And I think especially they needed it more than, other than maybe the NHL, because I think less people watch the NHL, but like in the US, I think the MLB really, really needs that money. And that's why I think I want to see a harder push from MLB, not the players union, because I agree with them. Like, they should get more things that they want because they're the ones making the money. But I think from the actual owners, like, do they want to make money? Like, do they want the season to happen? Because the way the two have been interacting, it's like they don't care if the season happens or not, right? You said how quick the meeting was, the frequency of these meetings, the fact they've only met once since everything shut down. I would want them to be meeting every day. It's like when the government shuts down, they meet every day and try to get it back on when we had that government shutdown. So I want to see more meetings and I want to see more urgency because right now there's no urgency. And if there's no urgency to get the season on, who even says there's a season at all? Because what if we get to like May, June, and there's still no urgency, or they decide to finally be urgent then? Because then the season won't start until once they get everything through August. Like, I think it's really complicated, but I think this Monday meeting and the frequency of the next 2 weeks, if they don't get more done in Monday's meeting, they need to meet at least twice in the 2 weeks after that. And I think something's got to give, and the fans really want baseball, but I don't think they care about bringing it back as much as they care about getting their demands through. So I would say it's going to be a while before we see baseball.
Yeah, I agree. And guess what? If the U.S. Congress can be able to avoid a government shutdown and get things done as divided as they are, there's no reason why Major League Baseball shouldn't be able to do the same.
Literally, yeah.
A lot less at stake, but
yeah.
That's where we'll leave it here. Hopefully, we'll get some more news after Monday's meeting. But also want to give, just like we did when Raheel was on the show last time, got to give Zoe a shout out because she's going to be heading to Northwestern in the fall. Northwestern class of 2026. So congrats to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited for Northwestern to play Rutgers and beat them in many sports. However, Northwestern sports suck sometimes, so we'll see.
A lot of the time, but then again, so does Rutgers. So you know what? We can be scraping the bottom of the.
I was gonna say, I was like, you go to Rutgers, please.
Yeah. Well, guess what? Rutgers is 5-2 in men's basketball in the Big Ten right now, so I'm feeling good.
Okay, and Northwestern just beat Michigan State in men's basketball. I will have you know. So
okay, but up here. We were celebrating Ron. Wait, I can't even name my camera. We were celebrating Ron Harper Jr. because he made the greatest shot in history. I don't know. It's a new.
Oh my god!
I can't even see it because they beat the #1 team in the country.
Yes, I remember hearing about this last time I was on.
Yes, I know. I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty proud of it. But anyway, that's about it for today. Again, you can follow along on Twitter at SportsSpeak Live with our pick'em for divisional playoff weekend in the NFL. We'll have more next week. But for Zoe Alter, I'm Eddie Kalegi signing off here on SportsSpeak. We hope you have a great rest of your weekend.